So the fallout effects from DeepSeek are still rippling through Silicon Valley and the wider AI ecosystem. We talked a bunch about DeepSeek last week. This is a Chinese AI lab that has created open weight models that are allegedly as powerful as open AI products and the products of other model providers for what they believe is a fraction of the cost of training those other closed lab products. Now, the impact of DeepSeek's latest releases, which is V3, which is a competitor to GPT 4.0, and R1, a competitor to reasoning models, the impact of these was pretty immediate and dramatic. So, as we were reporting on this last week on Monday when we recorded, NVIDIA was seeing its stock plunge. It ended up down nearly 17% in a single day, erasing roughly $600 billion in market value. This is reportedly the largest single day loss for any company in US stock market history. The broader tech sector saw steep declines as investors questioned the massive AI investments being made by these companies to train AI models when apparently DeepSeek is able to do it on the cheap. So companies like Microsoft, Meta, and Google are facing a lot of investor scrutiny. OpenAI and Microsoft are also now investigating whether DeepSeek may have used data distilled from OpenAI's systems. David Sachs, who's President Trump's AI czar, claims that there is, quote, substantial evidence that DeepSeek used OpenAI's models to train its own, an allegation DeepSeek has not directly addressed. The idea here, which David Sachs is not the only person to question, is did they actually train their models for as cheap as they say and as quickly as they did without any other help? And it sounds like there are a lot of questions if that's actually the case. Now, DeepSeek has also triggered security concerns. Hundreds of companies and government agencies are now blocking access to it over fears about data security and Chinese government access. The Irish and Italian data protection authorities have also launched investigations into how DeepSeek handles European user data. So, Paul, first, let's talk about the fallout in the markets. Like, this is something a lot of listeners, I would imagine, will immediately be seeing and or feeling. NVIDIA is still kind of way down. Like, is DeepSeek going to change how investors think about the economics of these big AI companies?
I don't think so. I think it was mostly an overreaction because people didn't really understand what it was or what the implications were, and it's kind of how the market works. The thing I had kind of, again, I very very careful. I'm not providing investing advice. I say this every single time, but I had a lot of friends reach out to me asking what in the world is going on that day by text, and what I generally guided people is, if you're worried about short term, yeah, you could see these drops and they may actually sustain for a little bit. But if you're thinking long term, there's no fundamental change. If anything, this creates greater demand for GPUs from NVIDIA because it just proves out the ability to build intelligence more efficiently. It doesn't mean you're going to build less of it or like require less computing power.
Yeah.
So I just really saw it as a significant overreaction. Not surprising. I do think that had it been an American lab that had done it, there would have been no reaction. If not, NVIDIA might have actually been up that day, which is part of kind of how I assess this. So I think the key is it opens up these kind of unknowns, and Wall Street just doesn't like uncertainty and unknowns, and so they had to kind of let the dust settle a little bit. Um, and I think it was pretty apparent right away that everything wasn't as it appeared. Like it wasn't that. I think we talked about this on last week's show. Like the training run probably could have been in the 6 million range, but that doesn't mean that's what they spent to build this thing. It's more likely they spent over $1 billion on the infrastructure and the chips and everything that they built in to enable it. But it still makes it significant. Like Zuckerberg said, he acknowledged it. NVIDIA released a statement acknowledging it. Sam Altman tweeted about it, saying it was an impressive model. So people took notice, and it was like was certainly a noteworthy event in the timeline of advancements of AI. I think the fact that they show the chain of thought so clearly, which is still
Hmm.
wild. Like if you look on Twitter and you see some of the examples, 'cause I haven't personally used the model, but if you look at some of the examples where it's showing you what it's thinking as it's like answering, it's wild. Like, it's kinda how the human mind works, so you can see it kinda bouncing around, and OpenAI has, to date, as well as Google and Anthropic and others, they have all avoided showing that level of chain of thought, I believe, for security purposes. Like, I
Mm,
think they see that as somewhat dangerous to be a be able to understand that deeply what the model is doing and thinking. Um, so you're seeing kind of some other stuff where now these other model companies are starting to trickle out more advanced stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what happens this week. It's going to be hard to get a read on the markets this week, obviously, because of the tariff war that was started over the weekend, and
yeah.
now the U.S. is imposing tariffs on Mexico. Although I just saw that got delayed a month now. We'll see if the one in Canada goes through. It's going to be 25% on Canada, but they were having phone calls today to try and negotiate that down. So the markets are running haywire right now because of tariff wars, not because of DeepSeek and other stuff. So you can't read into like NVIDIA's stock this week and figure anything out. So the last note I'll make here is Andrew Ng, who we've talked about many times, one of the founders of the Google Brain team, creator of Coursera. He has deeplearning.ai. Um, Heavily involved in the current and past of AI. So he tweeted, the buzz over DeepSeek this week crystallized for many people a few important trends that have been happening in plain sight. One, and these are important notes. China is catching up to the US in generative AI with implications for the AI supply chain. Two, open weight models are commoditizing the foundation model layer, which creates opportunities for application builders. Now, what that means there is like if you think about OpenAI and Google, how they have kind of these, more closed proprietary models, what they're saying is like these open weight models are catching up to the biggest models out there, and it's going to
Mm.
commoditize like the value of these things. And then the third was scaling up isn't the only path to AI progress. Despite the massive focus and hype around processing power, algorithmic innovations are rapidly pushing training costs down. And then the final note I'll make here is related. Sam Altman actually did a Reddit conversation. This was on like Saturday or Friday. I don't remember what day this was. And Sam said, OpenAI has, quote, been on the wrong side of history and need to figure out a new open source strategy. He added that not everyone at OpenAI shares this view, and it's also not our highest priority. So, again, the DeepSeek moment may have been the trigger for Sam to finally step up and say,
Mm.
we're not doing everything I think we should be doing with open source, which is what Elon Musk's beef has been in part with Sam all these years. So yeah, just it's a continuing story. I think it's going to probably fade pretty quick. I expect that people are going to get used to the Chinese labs putting out advancements in models, doing things more efficiently, pushing the American labs to maybe release stuff before they would normally be ready. And I think we're just going to kind of in a week or two, this will be the new world, and we'll be used to it.
And just to kind of wrap this up with a bow, so it's clear there is a moment here. This is deeply important, but it sounds like also just contextually, you know, a lot of people were under that false impression that, oh, they did for $6 million what OpenAI does. That's just not true.
That I think it's pretty safe to say that those
Okay.
media headlines were misrepresenting what was actually going on. And I think you're right. Like if you look back 5 years from now, I would imagine if you were making a timeline of significant milestones in AI development over that
Hmm.
year period, the DeepSeek moment is probably on that timeline. Like that's how I kind of think about why we're talking about this for a second week in a row. Is I think um, when we look back, it'll have been a very significant moment. And one of the things it may trigger that I don't think is necessarily a good thing is I think OpenAI and others are going to accelerate the release of more advanced models as a result of
Mm.
this to stay ahead when they have yet to solve how to keep those models safe. And I think that's going to be a major problem as we move throughout this year.
As we have said many times, it's not a good year for the AI doomers.
No.